Civilization or Barbarism, an Authentic Anthropology by Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. The Chancelade man, who would be the prototype of the yellow race, appeared in the reindeer period about 15,000 years ago in the Magdalenian age. Is he a mongrel born in the cold climate from both stocks of the last Grimaldi in Europe and the new Cro Magnon? In any case, considering his dolichocephalic trait, he could only have been a Paleo Siberian and not a true yellow man like the Chinese or the Japanese, because the latter is a brachycephalus in general. And we know that the morphological trait did not exist in the Upper Paleolithic age. The mesophiliac trait appeared during the Mesolithic age, around 10,000 years ago, and the brachycephalic trait much later. The brachycephalic races, yellow Semites, appeared only around the Mesolithic age, probably following great migratory currents and interbreeding. Thus, humanity was born in Africa and differentiated itself into several races in Europe, where the climate was sufficiently cold at the end of the Wormian glaciation. If the human being had been born in Europe, it would have been first white, and then it would have negrified, darkened, under the equator with the appearance of the formation of melanin at the level of the epidermis, protecting the organism against the ultraviolet rays. Therefore, this is not a value judgment. There is no particular glory about the cradle of humanity being in Africa, because it is just an accident. If the physical conditions of the planet had been otherwise, the origin of humanity would have been different. Hence, the interest of the expose resides solely in the necessity to show with the most possible scientific rigor the unfolding of the facts relative to the human past in order to restore them all their meaning and also to extricate from them the foundation of both science and civilization. One can thus measure the greatness of the damage per- perpetrated by ideologies that knowingly falsify their data. In light of the above mentioned facts, it seems normal that Africa, which did not see the birth of the Cro Magnon and the Chancelade man, did not know their respective industries. The Soltrian and the Magdalenian. Instead, Africa had the Aughnatian industry, Egypt, Kenya, etc., whose age would have to be re-examined in light of the new dating techniques. But as one would expect, physical anthropology, using the latest findings of genetics, molecular biology, and linear analysis, denies race and admits only the reality of differing populations. It is sophisticated science strongly coated with ideology. But when dealing with the transmissions of the hereditary defect, as in the case of sickle cell anemia, the notion of race reappears. Sickle cell anemia, genetically speaking, strikes only black people, says the same science that denies race. In the case of thalassemia, another hereditary defect that afflicts the Alpine race or the white Mediterraneans. Physical anthropology asserts that this disease attacks only the inhabitants of the Mediterranean periphery. Race does not exist. Is it to say that nothing allows me to distinguish myself from a Swede, and that A Zulu can prove to Botha, Minister of white minority government of South Africa, that they both are of the same genetic stock and that consequently, at the genotypical level, they are almost twins, even if accidentally their phenotypes, meaning their physical appearances, are different. Certainly, the dilution of the human species genes during prehistoric times is very important. But from there to deny race in the sense that it impacts on history, on social relations, meaning at the phenotypical level, which is of interest solely to the historian and to the sociologist, is a step that the daily facts of life prohibit anyone from taking. Why does a certain physical anthropology use this scholarly manner to duck the questions? Is it a loaf to rigorously derive all the implications of the monogenetic origin of humanity, and in the same vein to take into consideration the real development of the appearance of the races? But an avant garde West has already begun to courageously spread these ideas. And it was a white American who wrote, I proceeded to explain that the first human beings were black and that light skinned people developed later by natural selection to survive in temperate climates. It made us all feel much closer. The Paleolithic industry has been attested to in the Nile Valley. It therefore appears that this valley was necessarily populated solely by blacks from the origin of humanity up to the appearance of other races 20,000 to 15,000 years ago. Prior to some infiltrations at the end of the fourth millennium, whites were absent from Egypt and in practically remained that way until 1300 BC and the period of the great invasions from the peoples of the sea under the 19th dynasty, not taking into account the Hyksos invasions. The genetic table of the races represented in the tomb of Ramses III, 12th century BC, shows that the Egyptians perceived themselves as blacks, figure 17. In fact, the Egyptian artist does not hesitate to represent the genetic type of the Egyptian as a typical black, a Nubian. Karl Lepsis, a white scholar from Germany who made this discovery, was surprised and wrote, where we expected to see an Egyptian, we are presented with an authentic Negro. This ruins all the tendentious studies of ideologists and demonstrates that the Egyptians did not establish any ethnic difference between themselves and the other Africans. They belonged to the same ethnic universe. What then happened from the anthropological standpoint after the appearance of the Cro Magnon in Europe? This question will be debated for a long time to come, but there is sufficient reason to suppose that the Alpine race is indigenous to Europe and therefore the descendant of the Cro Magnon, whose survivors are the Basques. Thus, the Basques language could very well be the oldest in Europe. And I will leave there and continue. I'm Uriel N. Civilization or barbarism. Thank you.